One of the major rules that goes along with liaison is this concept of forbidden liaison. And when we talk about that, we have to talk about the aspirate H. What do we mean when we call an H aspirated in French?
I think the first thing to mention about the H in French is that it is a silent consonant. We don't really ever pronounce it. So that's number one.
Even when it's
Which,
aspirate, even when we call it this aspirated sound?
yes, that word only has an implication with the context of liaison that we're talking about. So it doesn't do anything to the pronunciation of the H. So basically, when you have a word that starts with an H, it will sound like the word starts with a vowel, which is why we get into this situation where there technically could or could not be a liaison, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now with H, there are two different kinds of H's. Even though we don't pronounce them, there's two kinds because it would be too simple otherwise. And the aspirate H, it only means that the liaison in front of it will not be allowed in this case.
So that's the forbidden liaison thing that we're
That
talking about.
it becomes a forbidden liaison that can never happen. If the H is not aspirate, then the liaison is allowed and should be made according to the normal rules of liaison. This is something that even French children have to actually spend quite a bit of time learning. When I remember when we're little, just to figure out which H's are aspirate and which are not, takes a while, and we make a lot of mistakes. In a dictionary, this will usually be indicated in some way. Most of the time, there will be a little asterisk next to the word if the H is aspirate, and there won't be an asterisk if the H is not aspirate.
In my Larousse app on my iPad, it's got an apostrophe, not an asterisk. So they do different things sometimes.
That's correct. Just check at the beginning of your dictionary. They'll usually tell you what their symbols mean, but that's how you know for sure.
Mm-hmm. And there are two that we run across on a regular basis. One of them is the word for hate, which is kind of nice that we realize that the word for hate, which you know is going to come up in an opera, has an aspirate H.
Yes, so that word is N, Haine, and it is an aspirate H, so you're not allowed to make the liaison. And I will add that just to complicate things a little bit more, on that word, so the H is technically not pronounced, so it's really just N. You will every once in a while hear a French singer actually put a little bit of an H in there for emphasis and drama. And I think this is maybe a little bit more of an old-fashioned thing to do, but you do hear it in recordings. And if it's something that helps the line or gives you a little bit more, I would say a little bit more oomph with the word, that it could be actually quite nice to do. So, for instance, we have that word in Il pleure dans mon cœur by Debussy, sans amour et sans haine. So here we see that we could wonder if there is going to be a liaison between sans and n, but since the H is aspirate, there will be no liaison. So we don't say sans n, but sans n.
The other word that comes up everywhere is the word for high.
The word for high is o in the masculine or haute in the feminine, and this one also is an aspirate H. From En sourdine, we have que les branches hautes font, and not que les branches hautes font.
Yeah, and these two words we see on a regular basis. So these I would actually memorize. The rest of them you can look up.
The more you sing that repertoire, the more you will develop reflexes for certain words, and you'll know instinctively which ones trigger the liaison and which ones don't.
Yeah. Well, and just to hear some examples of an H that is not aspirated.
Yeah, well, another very common word in poetry is the word for alas, so hélas in French. So again, notice that the H is not pronounced, but in this case, it's not aspirate. So if you have something in front that could trigger liaison, you will actually do it. Here from Adieu, we have mais hélas, les plus longs amours. So the liaison is done here because the H is not aspirate.
Exactly. Or the word for men is
Homme. And again, this one allows the liaison. So from ici-bas, we have ici-bas, tous les hommes pleurent.
And one thing that I find interesting is that words that share the same root aren't always the same aspirated or unaspirated, like the word for hero.
Yeah, that's a fun little tidbit. So the masculine word for hero in French is héros, and the H in this one is aspirate. So you will never do the liaison here. So you will not say des héros, but des héros.
Exactly, that came up in Troyen.
Yes, it does. So it's actually something, and also because if you say des zéros, we understand zeros and not heroes in
Ah,
French. So it's an important distinction here. But in the feminine, the H is actually not aspirate. The feminine word is héroïne, and in the plural, you will say des héroïnes and not des héroïnes.